Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Ray Flowers breaks it all down for you from a fantasy sports perspective. Hey there, everyone. Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. Hope you're doing well. Hope Monday Night Football was kind to you. Was it good? Did you enjoy the doubleheader? I did. Like I said yesterday, I think that's a much better way to go than playing Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, all the stuff the NFL does. What did you think? Let me know in the comment section if you're watching here live, listening live on YouTube at youtube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork or on Facebook at facebook.com/FantasyGuruHQ. You can leave your comments and we'll talk about them through the show. Usually address them at the end of the show. I got something in my throat today. I don't know what it is. So if I, a couple times, I apologize for that. There's no cough button on this with the system we use, unfortunately, so I can't mute it for a second. But I'll do my best not to choke to death here on air. Again, I'm Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday here on Elite Sports. I was going to say Elite Sports Game Time. Wow. I was going back all the days. That's an old Sirius XM show. Let's get this straight. This is Fantasy Sports Daily, Monday through Friday at 12 o'clock Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time. I'm hosting Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. You can follow me on Twitter, X, Instagram, all those places at The Ray Flowers. Wednesdays, Justin Fensterman is the host. What are we doing today here on the show? Because it is a Tuesday, we'll be visiting with Armando Marsal in about a half an hour. And we'll talk Monday Night Football. We'll go over the two games, the highs, the lows, and we'll also preview the waiver wire. There's a lot going on, obviously. It's that time of the week, so we'll start looking into the waiver wire with Armando. Guys like Andy Dalton, Bucky, Irving, Emanuel, Wilson, Juan, Jennings, Quentin, Johnston, Jalen, Taylor, Xavier, Legette, Cole Kmet, some of the names we might discuss here in a bit. Before we get to that, we will talk some baseball. Winding down 4 games yesterday. How weird was that? Just a weird 4 games yesterday. We'll talk about a few names. Jackson, Jobe, Hayden, Birdsong, Julio, Rodriguez, Tanner, Houck. Some injury concerns with Yordan, Alvarez, Brenton, Doyle, Josh Young, and Kenley, Jansen. And then we'll also do a little bit, what do I need? Looking at some players and their performances at this point in time. What do these guys need the rest of the way? And conversely, will that help you? We'll talk about that here in a little bit. I can tell already it's going to be one of those days where I'm having a problem talking. So just be aware. A lot of times this happens, and I get into the groove a little bit as the show goes on. Hopefully that'll happen today. Right now, we're struggling a little bit. John G, by the way, before we get involved with the baseball talk, says went 3-0 this week, 4-0 this weekend. 3 of my wins were by a combined total of 3.8 points. Sometimes in fantasy, it helps to be lucky, handsome, and humble. Well, John, you've got all 3 of those. You are lucky, it sounds like. You're certainly handsome and humble. So good for you. I haven't looked at all my scores this morning either. I think I did pretty well this week, but I do know that in Scott Fishbowl in week 1, I lost by 0.8 points, 0.874 or something like that. Or I'd be 3-0 in that league. So winning 4 leagues by less than 4 points, you are living right there, John. So good for you. All right, let's talk a little bit of baseball. Jackson Jobe, who, and again, we'll visit with Armando Marsal in about 25 minutes to continue the football talk. Jackson Jobe is being promoted. And this is kind of out of nowhere. This was not expected. Everyone fully expected this to happen next year. But as we've seen oftentimes with teams pushing for the playoffs late in the year, they go with talent. And the Tigers are not afraid to, use Holton as an opener, use Herter as a bulk reliever. They've done a lot of mixing and matching in the bullpen and the starting rotation. And they're calling up Jackson Jobe, who, for those people that don't know, is, I think, the number 1 prospect we hadn't seen in baseball this year. Phenomenal talent. There's a chance for him to be an ace, the big league level. There's a chance for him to be, a top 10 starting pitcher. Like, he's got that skill set, 2.4 ERA, a 1.1 whip, more than a strikeout an inning. He's got the high 90s fastball. He's got a slider that's pretty dynamic. Throws a cutter. He is a handful. And there are a lot of scouts that, again, predict this guy is going to be an ace in the big league level. What are we going to get out of him in the last week of the season? That's a good question. What we're hearing is that the Tigers, pushing for the playoffs. Go Tigers. I see there, Doug. Oh, by the way, try a hot toddy for your cough throat. I don't really have a cough. I think the cough is going to come up because I got crap in my throat. It's kind of weird. I don't know. I've been feeling pretty healthy here. So maybe I just Maybe it was the beer from last night. I don't know. But thank you for the kind thoughts, Doug. And to Doug's Tigers, Jobe is likely to be utilized out of the bullpen. That's what we're hearing. And, at the last week of the season, if he gets a couple outings, throws 4 innings, gets 6-7 strikeouts, is he going to be in line for saves? Doesn't seem likely. Is he going to be in line for victories? Sure, potentially on the game scenario. But this is one, I think, more about, and I had a question about this yesterday in Discord over at fantasyguru.com. Yes, we're still answering baseball questions there. I had a comment there, someone, in an AL league saying, look, Jobe, do I add him on the waiver wire? And I'm like, well, you got to add him on the waiver wire with the keeper league, right? So, him being called up now is more, I think, about what that does for keeper leagues and changing the scenarios with him, because obviously he is, again, arguably the number 1 right-hand pitching prospect in baseball. He'll be utilized out of the bullpen. That's what we're hearing. Hayden Birdsong was somebody that we talked about yesterday. Remember, there was an article written on Sunday kind of highlighting 2 start guys this week and 1 start guys this week that I thought you might be able to roll with. Yesterday at fantasyguru.com in a Rays Ramblings piece, I talked about the hitters. I looked at their expected WOBA the last 50 and 100 plate appearances, who has seen improvements there. Also talked about a bunch of hitters that have been hot the last couple of weeks. So some potential waiver wire targets there. One of the pitchers that was in the article is Hayden Birdsong. And yesterday he gave up 2 runs in 5 innings. The Giants defeated the Diamondbacks 6-3. That's as good as anyone could have expected, I think, Birdsong to have pitched in that matchup with the Diamondbacks. Gave up 4 hits, only walked 2, and had 6 strikeouts. And he continues to bring strikeouts. That is something that, 77 strikeouts and 67 innings pitched for Birdsong. Future's, brightish. And we've seen don't forget, we saw, and I'm not putting him in that same class as Hunter Brown, but we saw Hunter Brown figure things out. Maybe he's more Spencer Arrighetti, who was really bad, and then he figured things out. Maybe Birdsong gets there. Too late in the year this season for that, obviously. But maybe next year he's a rotation rounder outer in mixed leagues. He does have a second start on the final day of the season if the Giants don't change the rotation against the Cardinals. To me, and I think to everyone, that's this 2-step this week. The more difficult one was the first one against the Diamondbacks. And again, he was effective yesterday. Gives you a little bit more confidence in utilizing him in that final day of the season, if indeed he does make that start. And remember, these things are all apt to change here as we work down the stretch in the final week of the season. Giants obviously not going anywhere, so they'll play that by ear with him. Julio Rodriguez is, he's not going to be as good at rebounding from the slow start as Corbin Carroll has been. But he went 3 or 5 last night. He had another couple of RBIs, stole a base, and Julio Rodriguez, who we'll talk about in a few minutes again, in the month of September, is batting .373 with 8 home runs. He's got 6 stolen bases and 23 RBIs in 24 games. We will do a postmortem on Julio Rodriguez. Everyone will do it. We'll all talk about in the offseason. And what we're going to say is Julio Rodriguez is going to still be a second-round pick, if not a first-round pick next year. I'm just calling it. He's going to be a top 25 guy again next year, despite the fact the numbers weren't there. He was a top 5 pick this year. I think there will be people that will aggressively take him as their first-round pick next year. And, with the ability to analyze things over the offseason and find out whether that's the way I would go or not, we'll figure out. But I think that he's just reminding everybody here in this month of September that even though the season was a mess, was he 23 and he's dynamic. And he could be the number 1 player in fantasy next year, right? He could do it. No, I don't want, maybe not with Ohtani, but number 2 player in fantasy. Julio Rodriguez has been fantastic this final month. If you had him in a head-to-head league, hopefully you made it long enough for it to matter, because, right now he's just absolutely killing it. If you didn't make it long enough to matter, he cost you and screwed you. Well, then I apologize as I take a photo of my cat. That's what I was doing if you wondered where I was looking sideways. Tanner Houck was back on the hill for the Red Sox. He had the issue with his arm, dead arm. They're letting him pitch. I guess there's nothing structurally wrong, but I think he basically just kind of wore out. And in his return, he threw 60 pitches, pitched effectively through 60 pitches. Yesterday, he got through 5 scoreless innings, and you might think to yourself, well, yeah, this is fantastic. And it was, but he threw 57 pitches. So technically, he could pitch against the Rays later this week. Would they do that? Possibly. They've also waved the white flag. Devers is on the injured list. They, again, have had him back for 2 starts. He hasn't thrown 65 pitches in either start. It's a lot to expect a guy to be that impressive as he was yesterday, to go 5 innings when you're throwing 65 pitches. So the matchup is a good one against Tampa. We will see. Hopefully your league doesn't come down to whether he makes that start or not. But he looked extremely good yesterday, extremely effective. He's been terrific this season. He's only 9-10, but he's pitched way better than that. He should be 14-10 or 14-9 or whatever. 3.1 ERA, 1.14 WHIP, about a strikeout inning, a little under. He's got 155 strikeouts, 180 innings, so a little bit below a strikeout inning. But he's been as good as possibly could have expected. He finally lived up to that expectation after I've talked about him for years. Make a decision, Red Sox. Start him, relieve him. Start him, relieve him. Start him, relieve him. Make a decision. They made a decision. They put him in the rotation, and it worked. Chris Fleming says, Dexter. Yes, it was Dexter. He's looking very cute over here. My dog is actually – so you can follow my dog on Twitter – my dog on Instagram at Ollie Aussie Dog. You can follow Dexter on Instagram at the Dexter Kitty. They're both laying next to each other, probably 6 feet apart, which never happens. They're both sleeping in the office here, which never happens. My significant other, she's away on business overnight. She'll be back later today, so they're sitting with me. And my foam roller that I use for my hips and hamstrings is kind of blocking the two of them. So there's a foam roller keeping them safely apart, even though they're only 6 feet apart and maybe 4 feet apart. So that's Tanner Houck. Now let's talk a little bit about some injury situations. Despite it saying MLN injury, we know this is MLB injury, right? Yeah, okay. Sorry about that for the typo. Again, early morning. Yordan Alvarez had testing done on his knee. Apparently, there's nothing structurally wrong. He didn't tear anything. It's not jacked up. However, he does have a sprained knee. And they have said that he's not going to play until Friday. Now, they didn't say he will play on Friday. They said he's not going to play until at least Friday. So there is a chance that Alvarez plays 3 games, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There's a chance he plays 2 games of those 3 over the weekend. That probably, it might be 1 game of the 3. It might be none. I mean, yeah. I have Yordan Alvarez in my dynasty league. That's the only league I have him in. It's a league where you can set your lineup twice, set it on Monday, set it on Friday. So I've removed him from my lineup, and I'll address it on Friday. For those of you making the decision in leagues that lock, I mean, we'll talk about that in a second with Brenton Doyle. I don't think you can start Yordan Alvarez this week if you don't have the ability to change your lineup on a daily basis. We just, again, maybe it's 2 games this week. It could be 0. Could be 3. Could be 0. So, I think that it's a horrible time. This, again, is another reason why I don't like head-to-head. I know a lot of you, I've gotten a bunch of messages, and kudos to all of you with your success. A lot of you in head-to-head were able to finish your league on Sunday, so at least you're not dealing with this final week. But this is just terrible timing for those people pushing for a title in any kind of format. Brenton Doyle, I'm pushing for a title in Tout Wars. We talked about it yesterday. Brenton Doyle has been a star. Brenton Doyle has been a superstar at Coors. The Rockies have 6 games this week at Coors. He hasn't played since the 18th of September because of a knee issue. There has been no update because they didn't play yesterday. There was no official update on, is he back in the lineup today for the Rockies? Is he going to be back on Thursday? Is he done for the season? I had to bench Brenton Doyle, and it's brutal. And again, I don't like leagues where you set your lineup once or twice a week. I think you should set your lineup every day. So hopefully all of you are in leagues like that where it doesn't matter. I'm getting bit by this. We talked about this yesterday. It's why I went out and added Pavin Smith, because I had to give myself some flexibility. Ultimately, I went with Smith in my lineup because, again, with Doyle, we just haven't heard. We'll probably hear later today. So even if you got the ability for your lineup not to lock, Pavin Smith obviously played last night for the Diamondbacks. If you have the ability for your lineup not to lock, maybe you can still make a late switch and get Doyle out of there. But for now, as we sit here, much like Yordan Alvarez, both these guys, you can't start them this week. And it's brutal in the case of both of them. But Doyle is a superstar at Coors Field, and he's not going to be in my lineup. Josh Young, who, look, let's just call 2024 a mess. It's just a mess. He had the wrist issue, cost him all that time, had surgery. Now he's got a hand issue. They're saying he's out for the rest of the year, which is a week. So, but with the Rangers eliminated for the playoffs, there's no reason to push this. When he was out there, he didn't do anything. He hit 260, which is fine. But a 298 on base percentage and a 421 slugging percentage, those two numbers combined are not league average. And for a guy who's supposed to be a 25-30 home run hitter driving in 90 runs, oof. it's easy to look at his season this year and blame injuries, and I think that's fair. And I'm willing to accept that and give him a mulligan. But hand injuries, wrist injuries, he's too young to say this is a chronic issue or concern at this point in time. But it was a disappointing season, and it leads to some trepidation heading into next year. We'll be able to break him down in more detail, obviously, in the offseason, get a truer handle on what exactly went down this year. But the bottom line is woefully missed expectations. When he was on the field, he just was a guy, and he's ending the year hurt, which is really disappointing for a young player. All right, let's see here. Oh, and Kenley Jansen goes on the 15-day injury list with right shoulder inflammation. His season is over. Unfortunately, had 27 saves. He pitched effectively for the Red Sox. Would have been nice to get to 30, as he usually does. Heading toward the twilight of his career, he'll be 37 next year. Again, still very effective. Whether he should be a closer or an eighth-inning guy, he's kind of at that point of his career. Well, it's like, but still a very effective pitcher. But he'll be shut down for the rest of the season. That leaves Chris Martin and Justin Slayton most likely to battle for saves the last week of the season. Red Sox, again, shut Devers down. That they're struggling a little bit. I don't know how many games they win the last week of the season. But Martin and Slayton are the two guys to look at if you're hoping to get a save or two. If you're in a Solds league, those guys move up in the pecking order with Kenley Jansen going down. We're about 10 minutes away from talking to football with Armando Marsal. Let's talk a little bit about what do I need? And I thought this would just be something, what the hell? Let's talk about it. There was only 4 games last night, so it was a light slate. We all were excited and hoping that, we weren't excited. We were ecstatic when Shohei Ohtani went 50-50, and it was like, all right, he did it. He needs 2 home runs for 55-55. He is out of control. Completely out of control. And 40-40 is luminous. 50-50 has never happened. Is he going to go 50-50? He needs 2 home runs. And the way he's swinging the bat, you're going to bet against him having 2 home runs the rest of the way? Because he's got 55 steals already. 55-55 is as crazy as 50-50 sounded. It could be 55-55. He is just, he's phenomenal. And like I said, best player in baseball history in terms of his all-around skill set. The question, as we discussed earlier this week, late last week, I want to say it was probably Friday. Maybe it was Thursday, Friday, right after he went 50-50. It was a week ago that happened. How much are you going to pitch next year? We'll see what the Dodgers' decision is with that. Jose Ramirez is on the cusp of going 40-40, a 40-40 third baseman. And I saw a report recently with Ramirez saying he's a Hall of Famer, and it's like, okay, I don't. And I think that opens up the question of what's a Hall of Famer to you? He's a Hall of Famer in the fantasy game, right? Is he a Hall of Famer in the real world? Have you ever said Jose Ramirez is the best player in baseball? Do you buy tickets to watch Jose Ramirez play? Again, I'm willing to entertain the discussion because when his career is over and you're looking at these numbers, it's like, whoa, right? Just interesting. I hadn't really thought of it. And if the guy's 8-9 years into his career and a fantasy superstar, and I don't really look at him as a Hall of Famer, we'll see. But anyway, he's 3 steals away from a 40-40 season as a third baseman, which would be historic. We'll see if he gets there here in the last week of the season. Willy Adames, who steals 5 bases a year, he needs 1 steal for 30-20. Yeah, Willy Adames going into free agency, if I'm not mistaken, 1 steal away from 30-20. Obviously, when he gets on base, he's running. He's going to try to get that 20th steal down the stretch here in the final week of the season. 30-20 for Willy Adames. If you had said to me he went 30-10, I would have been like, that's fantastic. He's going to go 30-20 maybe. Hell of a season for him. Ian Happ's got a back issue. So he's kind of right now, he is 2 steals away from a 25-15 season, dealing with the back issue with only a handful of games left. Not likely he gets to 25-15. But he is right on the cusp of that. He's had a very good season. He's settled in to be a very consistent, stable performer without being an elite guy. But stealing 15 bases, even though it's a different era now than it was 5 years ago, stealing 15 bases is really nice. Jazz Chisholm needs 2 home runs and 2 steals to go 25-40. Now he goes to the Yankees, just starts running like mad, right? Like all of a sudden, this got crazy interesting, right? So 25-40 possible. If he gets 2 steals, it'll be 20-40. We've said it for years with Jazz Chisholm. He's very, very good. He's very, very effective in the fantasy space. He's constantly injured, so he's never getting to those big numbers because of the time he missed. he's getting there this year. And obviously being part of that Yankees lineup has done very well. Can you imagine going from the Marlins to the Yankees? I mean, you might love Florida and the lifestyle and all that kind of stuff. The atmosphere around the team, I mean, can't get much different than that, can you? I mean, just George Springer, who has not been good. He's kind of in the Randy Arozarena zone, a guy that has not lived up to expectations, a guy that we're disappointed in, and a guy who is one home run away, Springer, from going 2015, which ain't bad. There's something to be said about these guys that just play and play and play and play, and they volume you to death. They're not sexy or exciting, but Springer going 2015, like who had that bingo card? And it's not been a good year. It's not been a good year. But going 2015, if he hits one more home run, George Springer's right there. Trea Turner, who has missed a lot. Trea Turner's been good this year. He was terrible at the start of last season. He was crazy good in the second half. He was stupendous in September. Been good this year. I think he stabilized things. He hasn't run as much as we hoped. He has missed time with injury, including with the hamstring injury, right? But he hasn't run as expected. He's a home run and a steal away from 2020. Obviously, you got to feel solid about him getting there this week. 2020 would be a nice accomplishment. Obviously, with him, we expect it 2030 is what we hope for every year. Part of that, again, is injury and missing games, but right on the cusp of having some round numbers here for a solid yet unspectacular season. We talked about Julio Rodriguez. He needs one home run and one steal to go 2025. Must be great to be that good, to be that bad, and still be a home run and a steal away from going 2025. It's like Corbin Carroll, right? It's the same thing we talked about earlier today. So Julio Rodriguez kind of right there on the edge of some significant numbers. Cedric Mullins is a very frustrating player. There have been periods of times where Cedric Mullins has been one of the best hitters in baseball. There have been periods of time where he's been one of the worst hitters in baseball. These are both facts. There have been times we sit at the top of the order. There's been times we sit at the bottom of the order for the Orioles. He's batting .228, which is terrible. He's got a .299 on base percentage, which is awful. And his OPS, right now of .702 is the lowest number he's had since he became a full-time big league player. It's a terrible number. Yet, despite all of that, he's got 18 home runs and 30 steals. So if he has 2 more home runs the rest of the way, he goes 20-30. This is now a fourth straight year, where he's had 15 home runs, and he has had 30, 34, 19 last year, and 30 steals. So basically over the last 4 years, he went 30-30 4 years ago. Over the last 4 years, he's basically been a 20-30 guy. And he's right on that pace yet again. Messy, ugly, Randy Arozarena-like, but he's right there on the edge. Jesse Winker's 14-14. Jesse Winker, who came into the season, with 2 or 3 steals, is on the cusp of a 15-15 campaign. That would be remarkable for Jesse Winker. Ceddanne Rafaela is a steal away from a 15-20 season, which would be an excellent level for a rookie baseball player at the major league level. Also, all those RBIs hitting 8th or 9th all season long. He's had a really good season, laying the foundation for what could be an even better counting category season next year. And then finally, Zach Galoff. And it's going to take 3 home runs, which is a stretch. But Galoff, out of nowhere, I think, considering where he was at the start of the season, he's got 17 home runs and 23 steals. He's on the cusp of going 2020. Now, he's lost 200 points in OPS. He's lost 80 points in isolated power. His strikeout rate has spiked 7% to 34%. This is not good. All of this is concerning stuff. But he's playing on a daily basis, and he's got a chance to go 2020. I think when it's all said and done, the counting category season will be at or slightly above expectations for him this year. The batting average way below expectations. So we'll have to do some digging with him in the offseason. 34% strikeout rate is horrible. And we know what that means. You hit 213 like he's hitting right now. But playing every day and doing some-ish things in the fantasy space. We'll visit with Armando Marsal here in a few minutes, talk a little Monday Night Football, talk a little waiver wire. Where is that information? Let me pull that up just so I have it. There it is when we get him on this list. Let's talk about some comments here that I see in the chat room here. Angela says, Kincaid won me my week. Yeah, we'll talk about, obviously, that situation. The Bills absolutely throttled the Jaguars, and the Jaguars are I mean, I don't want to pile on Trevor Lawrence because, I mean, what's the point? But Jeff Mans has been on this. Trevor Lawrence and the Jags ain't it. And they gave him $275 million. He ain't it. He's got great hair. He had all the success into heading to the NFL. He ain't it. They got destroyed last night. Kelsey and I forgot the other gentleman with Van Pelt talking at halftime. We're like, where's the passion? Where's the energy of the Jaguars? They're getting smoked. Every time the Bills get the ball, they're scoring a touchdown. Where's the passion and energy from the Jaguars? It's not there. It's just not. Like, they're in worlds of trouble. We'll talk about that moving forward with Armando Marsaul. Angel also made a comment. McGreevy, if he does well, Adam Sunday start. McGreevy starting tonight. I am not suggesting, or will I be suggesting that anyone starts Mr. McGreevy in his first big league outing at the big league level. He's kind of he's a feel pitcher more than a stuff pitcher, and he's got a really bright future, but he's making his MLB debut as a starting pitcher at Colorado. Don't expect him to do well, Angelo. If he does do well there, then you can talk about him pitching later in the week. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see what happens as we talked about earlier in the show. We've been talking about every day. Rotations are up in the air. If he is on the hill if he pitches well today and he's facing the Giants in San Francisco in that final start, could he be facing Birdsong we talked about earlier? He would be a solid choice because the Giants are just not hitting very well right now. Let's see here. Aaron R says, do you have an Instagram account for your pet parakeet too? What was that screeching sound? We have no parakeets. If you heard a screeching sound, it's because, sorry, I had the window open. We have scrub jays. We have blue jays. We have pigeons. We have crows. I think it was a crow you probably heard. And the window was open. There's a little window that I opened in the office for Dexter that I forgot to shut. Never had a pet bird. They're very smart and cool and all that. I've never had a pet bird. You had a pet bird? Anyone had a pet bird? African grays are the ones that have they understand hundreds of words and all that kind of stuff. My experience with birds is like when, Leave It to Beaver, they get a bird and and they talk about someone's having an affair or something. Never had a bird. My brother worked at a reptile shop through college. So I've had snakes and lizards, bearded dragons and ball pythons, that kind of stuff, but never had a bird. Slim Shady says the following. After this week, are we feeling much better with McLaurin or Sutton as your wide receiver too? Sutton is... I would say, are we feeling better about both? We're feeling much better about both. Obviously, both guys were very effective with double-digit targets for Sutton yet again. McLaurin for the 100 yards and the touchdown last night. I don't think either one of those guys are a comfortable wide receiver too at this point. It depends on your team, your lineup, the way you put your roster together, all of that. I don't think that we can look at one effort with Daniels looking very good, and we'll talk about this with Armando in a few minutes. I don't think that we can just look at the offense and say McLaurin's getting his 90 and a touchdown each week, or he's getting his 75 and 6 catches every week. Not there yet. Much better last night. Same thing with Sutton. I said all along, don't drop Sutton. Sutton's the number one wide receiver with the Broncos. He's someone you're going to want to hold on to. 2 of the 3 games, he's had double-digit targets. Nick's looked much better in week 3 than he had the previous 2 weeks. So these guys are trending upward. I would not feel confident right now saying that either one's my wide receiver too, though. I wouldn't go that far, Slim. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Monday Night Football in some more depth, and we'll also hit up on the waiver wire a little bit here because it's a Tuesday, and we do this every Tuesday with our buddy Armando Marsaul. He visits about a half an hour into the show on Tuesdays. Wednesdays, it's Rich Miletto and Justin Fensterman. Thursdays, it's me and Tyler Beaker. Fridays, it's me and Russell Clay. So today it's Armando. We'll talk Monday Night Football. There's 2 games. We'll talk the waiver wire. Don't forget to go to fantasyguru.com. Click the subscribe tab in the top right corner to get all of Armando's work. But also click the Elite Plus tab at the top. When you click on that Elite Plus tab, you can find this show and all the previous shows. You can listen to them all there. You can also find his podcast, Mine and Marsaul, 2 of the grouping of shows that we have in the Elite Plus network over at fantasyguru.com. So let's bring him in right now, Armando Marsaul of fantasyguru.com. How you doing today, Armando?
I'm doing good, Ray. And yourself?
I'm doing okay. I think we're both doing better than the Jaguars, who, I mean... I don't want to.
That's bad. It's bad. No, it's bad. There's
bad. Yeah, I don't want to spend much time on it, but just what do we do with Trevor Lawrence? Is he just a QB2 and that's the dream is dead? Like, can he be a QB1 the rest of the way? We just haven't seen it through 3 games.
No, we haven't seen it through 3 games. I just don't like what I've seen. He looks very flustered back there. Like, he just doesn't look comfortable. For me, I know I don't want to trust him right now as my QB1. If you have him as your QB1, I think there are players out there, I know it sounds crazy, but like Sam Darnold is out there that you can get. Derek Carr's out there. I mean, I know Derek Carr didn't have a great game this past week, but this is still a player that has been playing well so far this season. And just Lawrence has been the opposite, playing really poorly. And I think that there's a lot there that has to be fixed before it's going to get better. I've been asked a lot of Christian Kirk questions. I think last night what we saw, right, in the PPR format, he's going to get it done for you on occasions. I'm not cutting bait with him. If you don't want to start him, sure. But I'm still not cutting bait with him. He's still, I think, someone that can continue to pick up where he left off last night there. But I do think that there's going to be a lot of frustrations from this offense on a week-to-week basis here. And it's not going to get better overnight. I think it's going to be a process here before it gets better.
On the other side of things, in that 47-10 dismantling of the Jaguars, Josh Allen reminding everybody why he's a superstar. Jared Cook, touchdown, caught some passes. He had another strong game. Let's talk a little bit about the receiving group here. Coleman apparently was benched for being late, so he scored a touchdown, but he didn't see his normal amount of snaps. We had, Tommy Callahan come through, 6 catches, 72 yards, and a touchdown. I want to ask you about two guys, Curtis Samuel, who basically on a milk carton, like they're oddly not utilizing him much at all. He's not on the field. He's not getting looks. And then Dalton Kincaid, who got in the end zone last night, but 5 targets and 3 catches. Like he has been down 2 through 3 weeks, like every other tight end. So talk to us a little bit more about Samuel and Kincaid.
So I think with Samuel, right, if you're holding on to him for at this point, I think if you can add a receiver like a Juan Jennings, we'll talk about some of these waivers, but if you could add a receiver that's going to be a little bit better on your bench or on your roster than Samuel is, I think it's a good time to do it, right? Because at the end of the day, we were kind of looking at what Samuel's role is going to be. And so far, we haven't seen much of it. Now, let's keep in mind, he was dealing with that turf toe and it kind of returned from that injury. So maybe it's still, hampering him. But if you can upgrade your depth at the receiver position, I'm not against cutting Samuel. And I do think that there's going to be some moments throughout the season where he has, some decent games and some decent outings. I just don't think it's going to be consistent. As for Kincaid, look, the Bills are, I know they passed a lot last night, but they're still running the ball a lot early in the season, right? And I think that they're trying to do, what they can with James Cook. He's doing great. The offensive line is playing really well. So I think it's just going to be one of those seasons with Kincaid where when they do pass, they are spreading the ball around. You mentioned it. Tommy Callahan had a great game last night. 70+ yards and a touchdown there, 6 catches. Coleman, you mentioned, got in late, but they used him, as a red zone guy there for them. They got a touchdown pass. I think they were a little outside the red zone, but they got a touchdown pass there. So they're going to be using all of these players. It's not just going to be Kincaid. It's not going to be a 30% target share. It's just, they're moving the ball around and passing the ball around and spreading it really. So I think there are going to be some big weeks. I also think there's going to be some frustrating weeks so far, like we've seen so far with Kincaid. And I think that's here to stay. I don't think that's going to go anywhere. So if you drafted Kincaid for a floor, I don't think you're going to get the floor you were hoping to get.
Yeah, Hal says if Buffalo is running this much now, what's going to happen in the cold weather? Once Joe Brady started calling plays, this was last year, they started evening things out. This goes back to last year. So this is not, you mentioned they're trying to establish the run. They were doing that last year too. Their plan going in is not to be 70% passing, 30% running. That's just not the way the offense is operating, Armando.
No, they're not. They're not slinging it around anymore. And then when they're playing with it, this is another thing. They're playing with leads now, right? And instead of continuing to be aggressive and passing, they're kind of slowing things down and running the football. And that's the big change we've seen. Because in a close, tight game, they might elect to pass a little bit more, or if they're chasing points, of course, they might pass a little more. But playing with a lead now, it changes the dynamic and it makes it easier for them to establish that run, and especially when they're being so successful at it. So I think that this is what you're going to get from Buffalo here the rest of the way. I don't think it changes. I think this is going to be a very balanced offense, and game script will always dictate, the approach that week. But this is a team I expect is going to play with a lead often this season. A very good team. And I'll be honest with you, their defense has been playing pretty good as well. I thought that was going to be, a little bit weaker this season, but they've been pretty good thus far. So this is a good team, good Buffalo team right here.
Armando Marsallo joins us every Tuesday about 12:30 Eastern time on Fantasy Sports Daily. Let's talk about the other game. By the way, do you like the double Monday night games? I do. Do you?
I love it. I truly love it. I actually enjoyed both of those games very much last night. Got to watch it a little bit with my son, and then after that, just on my own. But it was good. I love it.
The Bengals don't love anything right now. The real Slim Shady fell to 0-3. I mean, it was better last night offensively, but this team lost the Commanders. The Commanders now 2-1. Let's start with the Bengals side of things. Everyone take a breath. Jamar Chase is fine. Joe Burrow is fine. I was having a discussion in Discord last night, like, which of these do I play, Thomas or Shakir? I'm like, you're down by 20 points. It doesn't matter. Both these guys are scoring 20 points. You're going to be fine. They went out and blew it up. So I don't think we should have any concern with Burrow and Chase. What about Higgins? He didn't do much, but he was on the field for his first game this season. How do you profile him the rest of the way, Armando?
They took a couple of shots in the end zone with him. I think they wanted to get him involved. You know, there was a big misplay that Joe Burrow threw it a little bit over him there. If you would have thrown it a little bit lower, that would have been 6 points. That would have been a touchdown. I think everyone would have looked. The outlook for him would have been much better today. For many, I like Higgins. Look, this offense obviously rolls when it's those three, very efficient. This is a team that I view him as a low end wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 most weeks. I think closer to that low end wide receiver 2 when healthy and when this offense is rolling. The big thing here is this defense. I mean, they're not good. Like, what is going on here? They are not good, which is good for Burrow and company from a fantasy standpoint, right? Because it means that they're going to run a lot of plays and whatnot. But I'm good with Higgins. I view him as a low-end wide receiver too, someone that, when healthy, I think could produce really good numbers. And I think Chase and him could produce at a very high level at the same time. So if I got to ask, do you start Higgins if you have him? Yeah, I would have started him yesterday. It maybe didn't pan out as you hope, but again, it was inches, like 6 inches lower on that throw, and we got 6 points. So it's how it works out sometimes.
On the other side of things, the Commanders again moved to 2-1. They had 38 points. They won 38-33. A couple of guys I want to talk about. One of them we already had a question about, but let's talk about the quarterback first. Jane Daniels, who I think through 2 games was fair to say was helping us in fantasy, but not playing well. Last night, he helped us in fantasy and played well. So, I mean, I hate this. You and I have talked about this. I've talked about this with everyone. We don't score things right in the fantasy space. I'm sorry, we don't. We just don't. If a quarterback runs the ball, it doesn't matter if he can pass. It's the way it is. Jay Daniels has the look of a QB1. He had a rushing touchdown last night. He was terrific as a passer. How heartened are you by what we saw last night? Because it wasn't just the numbers. He performed better last night, and we needed to see that, Armando.
He was playing with confidence last night, right? And I don't think that's something we saw early on in the season. And I think it's part of being a young quarterback in the NFL, right? Like, you're getting used to at the end of the day, it's a new job. He's getting used to a new job. He's learning the speed of the NFL. It's not the same as college. The game is different. Everything is different. The pressure level is different. And these are not things that we see in the box scores and in the statistics and in the analytics and stuff. This is just part of being a human. And I think we forget that aspect when we grade out these players. And there's going to be times like this. Like, that's why they drafted him so early, because he is that kind of quarterback, right? He has that in him, that leadership and the ability to take his game to the next level in those big stages and the big performances. I think after last night, maybe the coaching staff is going to allow him to give him more deep plays like we saw the McLaurin, give him those opportunities to take those deep throws and not throw it behind the line of scrimmage, maybe not be as conservative with their young quarterback and let them a little bit loose. And there's going to be growing pains. There's going to be frustrations. There's going to be some bad performances going to happen. But I think we got a glimpse of what he can bring to the table. And I think that that's here to stay. I think that they called a terrific game against the Bengals. I love the fact that they took some deep shots with McLaurin. I saw the question. I agree with what your analysis on that. Like, you're not automatically going to say, all right, McLaurin every week now, wide receiver 2. I don't think you're going to see this every weekend. I wouldn't react to it. I do think that this is a good sign of things to come. I think that this is a position of now they're growing and they're building that chemistry, and they're going to continue to build that chemistry. There's 3 games into the season with a rookie quarterback and a receiver. That's what we have here. I know they had the training camp, they had the preseason, but it's now actual game time. So I think there's going to be some good weeks, and I also think there's going to be some frustrating weeks. But I did like what I see, and I think that that's here to stay.
Yeah, remember with Daniels, everyone, before we just look at last night and forget, and it's 3 games. So I'm not saying the first 2 games are who he is. I'm not saying last night is who he is. We're still trying to figure this out. He's played 3 games in the NFL. He has 2 touchdown passes. That doesn't work. He's played 3 games in the NFL. He hasn't thrown the ball 30 times a single time. In fact, he hasn't thrown the ball 25 times twice. That doesn't work. And you look at his yards per attempt, to your point from last night, it went from under 8 the first 2 games to 11 last night. So there were certainly, again, it's his best game and all that, but we have 2 and 1 really good game, and we'll just have to see moving forward. Let's dive down a little bit more on McLaurin because, it's funny. I had someone send me a question 20 minutes before the game last night. I'm going to drop McLaurin. They'll probably change their tune now after last night, right? But let's be honest about this. He caught 6 passes last week for 22 yards. Last night, he only caught 4 passes, and one of them went for 55 yards, right? So, he's the guy in this offense, and no one's disputed that. But we still have an offense where I think we've had one guy all season hit 50 yards as a pass catcher. Last night, McLaurin, it was only 6 targets. It was only 4 catches. Kind of in that T. Higgins zone, or is he ahead of T. Higgins for you moving forward?
I think it's very matchup dependent, right? For McLaurin, I think it's going to be that way for him until we see more consistency. I really do think it's until we see more consistency, not only from him, but from the quarterback play. Like, we got one game, like we said, and I do think that they're going to build off of this game, and I think that they're going to continue to expand that playbook. But there's going to be games where they play a little bit more conservative, and it's going to impact McLaurin like we saw early in the season.
Morning, Masal Ray Flowers here on Fantasy Sports Day. Let's pull back from last night to actually talk a little bit of waiver wire looking forward here. Andy Dalton has played 2 games since the start of last season, and he's gone for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns in both games. Bryce Young takes 2 games to get to those numbers. It's just a fact. Bryce Young has been bad. And we all know that. We can all talk about his future. Look, let's put that aside. Where are we at with Andy Dalton? Because, again, 302 both games he started for the Panthers team. The team looked night and day different. Jeff Mans has jokingly said there's now 32 teams in the NFL again, totally different. People are going to get excited. You know how this goes. They're going to add, we've seen guys like Sam Darnold. There are guys, later in their careers that can have a rebound, right? Is Darnold somebody in a 1 quarterback league you're bothering with? And if he is available in a super flex league, how aggressive are we being with Andy Dalton?
So in a super flex league, it really depends on your situation, right? If you're dealing with a really bad QB2 situation, if you were someone that lost to a Tagovailoa and then you really didn't have anyone else to get, or if you took a shot on Skylar Thompson and that's what you're, be aggressive. If you're set at quarterback, I wouldn't be overly aggressive, but I would definitely put a bid out there because I don't think in a super flex league he should be a free agent at this point. Like you mentioned, he's been very efficient when he started his last 2 games. This offense looked very good. At the end of the day, they look good. That's just reality. I didn't think I would say that in a sentence this year, right? But now we have a change of quarterback. So the Panthers offense look good. When you look at it, they actually have several weapons, right? They have Deontay Johnson there. Brooks is not around, but when he comes, that's an additional weapon. Hubbard can hold the 4th down in the backfield. There, Thielen, he got dinged up, but he's on that team. You got Legette there. They have some weapons. It's not like it's an imposing offense by any means, but there are some pieces there that they can work with. And I think you're seeing it, a veteran quarterback taking advantage of those pieces. So I think his presence is going to upgrade some of these players as well here. So I think in the super flex league, you out there in a 1 quarterback league, I'm not ready to make him an every week starter right now. But again, it all depends on your quarterback situation. If you really waited long at that position and you took a shot at someone like Levis, or you take, one of those quarterbacks in the lower tier, you could definitely consider someone like Dalton here as your QB.
Armando beat me this week in our matchup in the Jeff Mans home league. I had Anthony Richardson in. If I would have played Dalton, I still would have lost by a couple of points. So it wouldn't have mattered. We jokingly said Fields was sniped in the draft by Armando 1 pick ahead of me. So, but then I was able to get Andy Dalton last week before he was promoted to the starting role. So I had him, but he was on my bench, and Anthony Richardson played like poo. Either way, Armando would have still beaten me. Just wanted to give you props for beating me this week, Armando.
You know what? I should give you. I should have said this at the beginning. I'm sorry, we're going to go off a topic here, but I should give you props. I told Fancy this morning on the phone call with him. I actually won my baseball league. I don't think I told you, but I won my baseball league thanks to your content. So, guys, if you're tuning in, greatest content right there. I won my baseball league this season. So
head to head, or was it Roto?
Head to head. Head to head.
Which site do you use, by the way, for that?
ESPN.
ESPN. Do you like the format? I haven't played on ESPN in a long time. Is the format good?
It's the only format I played baseball, and I do like it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, congratulations, and thank you. I'm sure I played a small part. You did all the work.
Oh, you played a big part now. Come on.
Appreciate that. He's Armando Marsal. I'm Ray Flowers. Yes, we do. We do still do baseball here for the next week. So I got the cash game breakdown coming out here in a couple hours. What about the backfield with Bucky Irving? There's in this, we've talked about, you and I have talked about this. I've talked about this with other guys. I've talked about it in Discord with everyone. Everyone's doing the churning, the carousel at the running back spot. Bucky Irving seems to be different because he's a backup who's playing himself into a role. The question is, how big is the role get? He is inarguably a better runner of the football than Rachaad White. No question. Is there going to be enough work for Bucky Irving to be somebody that people should be spending aggressively on the waiver wire if he's out there this week? Is he going to get 12 to 15 touches a week, or has this just kind of been a game flow scenario thing with him?
I think so. I think both, right? I think so far it's been a game script and kind of what we've seen with the Bucks. But I do think he's going to work himself to a 12 to 15 opportunity running back on a week-to-week basis. I do think that right now he has 31 opportunities versus the 44 for Rachaad White. So that's kind of what you're seeing there. So he's averaging just a little bit over 10 opportunities per game. That is Irving. I've been getting a lot of questions in regards to him. So for me, it's all about what's your goal? Are you looking for someone to plug and play? Are you looking for RB2? I don't view him as an RB2 right now this week. I do think eventually he could become that. Right, if he gets those opportunities, I think he could become that, especially if White misses any time or anything like that. But right now, I view him more as an RB3 / maybe a flex option. Like if you need a plug and play, someone who's going to get anywhere between 9 and 12 opportunities at this moment. That's what you're looking to get from Irving. But I do think, like you said, I do think he could carve out a larger role down the stretch. So it really depends on what you're doing. If he's out there, I think he should be on every roster at this time, because I do think he's going to be a 1v1 replacement if White misses any time. And I think those are such valuable assets to have on your bench, whether you're starting them or not. So even if you don't need his services right now, I do think you should be actively targeting Irving. Am I going to give up a massive asset to acquire him in a trade? No, I'm not going to do that right now. I don't like making those kind of trades where I'm giving up an asset for right now for a potential asset, because we don't know if we're really going to get that. So I'm saying that here because I've been asked a lot of those kind of trade questions in regards to him. Okay, I want to clarify that when it comes to like how I'm treating and viewing Irving here.
Armando Marsal, Ray Flowers. This guy should have been added last week. We talked about adding him last week. Checking interwebs, he's on a lot of waiver wires still. Now, the problem with adding Juan Jennings is he just had the greatest game of his life. He is very likely for the rest of his NFL career to never match the target, catch, yardage, or touchdown ever again, like legitimately ever again in his career. But now everyone's looking at 170,000 yards and 13 touchdowns last week, and it's going to cost. Now Deebo Samuel is down. Christian McCaffrey's going to Germany. Like, my God, what is going on there? Trent Williams is hurt. Like this, they lost Hargrove on defense. Like, things are starting to unravel quickly for the Niners. If Jennings is still on the waiver wire, how aggressive are you at spending to get him? And what are your expectations for him the rest of the way? For me, it's only his valuability is only as long as Deebo is out. Once Deebo and Ayuk are back, he just proceeds to catching 3 passes a week.
I view him as a short-term fix for a team, a wide receiver needy team. If you have a lot of wide receivers, there's no need to go out there. Maybe 5 to 10% of your fab, maybe that. If you have wide receivers, if you're a little bit needy and you want to go a little bit more aggressive, 10 to 15%. But you have to keep in mind that, like you said, once Samuel returns, like Jennings is going to go back to that role where he was getting 3 to 5 targets per week. And we talked about this last week. Like, you add Jennings, you don't have to start him, add him and see what the role becomes, right? Like, see what happens. You could have added him for probably 1%, 2% if you did it last week. Now you're probably going to be in a bidding war with all of your league members. Again, short term, I don't view this as a long term, thing. And I agree with you 100%. I don't think you're going to get this kind of production again. Like, I really don't. If it happens, I'd be stunned. I don't think it's going to happen again. I don't even think it'll be remotely close. I don't think you're going to get 3 touchdowns, 150 plus yards. It's just, this was his absolute ceiling game. And I don't think you'll see that ceiling game ever again. So I agree with you. I think you're going to see anywhere between, 8 to 12, 8 to 15 fantasy points per game, so long as Samuel is out. We have to keep in mind that Houck didn't play all that great this past week, and I think that could change as well next week.
14-team FSGA league. I added Juan Jennings last week for $4. That's what Armando's talking about. You still got him now. Good luck. when you score touchdowns and you read box scores, hey, man, this wide receiver scored in 2 games. Hey, man, this wide receiver's got 3 touchdowns. Hey, man, 12 months ago, everyone loved this guy, Quentin Johnston. Now, if you didn't watch the game, you missed the fact that Quentin Johnston just ran with his hand in the air and got a touchdown pass, so there was no one within 30 feet of him. So he didn't do anything other than catch a pass where he was completely wide open. But 3 touchdowns in 2 games. Uncertainty about the offense, uncertainty about the offensive line, uncertainty about the quarterback. Quentin Johnston, what are we doing?
Again, I view him as he's someone you want to have for depth, right? Someone that if you need a plug and play, you can put in there as a plug and play. It accounts for 20% of the target share there right now. Not a super high volume. This is a run first offense, but like you mentioned, he had 2 touchdowns in week 2, 1 touchdown this past week, and someone that's involved in the passing game there. And if you're looking for a potential plug and play, like in bye weeks are coming up, injuries are piling up, like I view him as a depth piece, not someone that I want to go out and start at my wide receiver 3 each and every week. I just don't have that that confidence that he's going to sustain. We're chasing touchdowns with him, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be another receiver we talk about here. We're going to be chasing touchdowns there as well. So I don't like the idea of chasing touchdowns. They're so unpredictable in the NFL.
Are we talking about chasing touchdowns for a guy who's caught a touchdown all 3 games?
Yeah.
Possibly Jalen Nailor of the Vikings.
Yeah, that's
now so he scored in 3 straight games, which is obviously uber attractive. He's averaging, 12 PPR points a week, something like that. That's usable, right? He's seen 1, 4, and 4 targets, so there's no volume there. And Jordan Addison's supposed to be back this week for the ankle injury, from the ankle issue he's dealing with. So has the train passes by with Nailor already? I mean, does Addison just return and he takes this role basically away from Nailor and Nailor goes back to nothing? Or is there something to see with this offense and Sam Darnold right now?
No, I think you should have been taking advantage of Nailor and DFS. That should have been the spin on this. Cheap value DFS touchdown hunt there. But no, look, like you mentioned this. So not a single game with over 4 targets, not a single game with over 54 receiving yards. This has all happened with Addison dinged up. Addison's set to return. I think he's going to cut into the already not high volume role and the opportunities. So there's not been one game this year that he's had over 17% target share. We have to remember it's Addison's returning soon, and then in a month from now potentially Hawkinson returns. Like this is one of those situations where if you're investing, you're also investing in a short-term solution, not a long-term solution here. Again, it'll take injuries for him to carve out the kind of role we're seeing now. This is right now an offense is missing 2 key pieces, and he still hasn't been able to get more than 4 targets in a single game this year. So just keep that in mind.
Monter Masal, Ray Flowers. We talked earlier about the offense changing with the Panthers. We talked about Andy Dalton. Deontay Johnson went to the moon last week. He'll continue to be their wide receiver 1. Thielen caught a touchdown. On the touchdown, he hurt his hamstring. Doesn't sound like he's going to play this week. Jonathan Mingo, Xavier Legette. Dalton's thrown the ball 35 times with this level of effectiveness. We need to be paying attention to who the wide receiver 2 on this team is. Do either Mingo or Legette interest you as waiver wire additions if they're out there right now with the health concerns with Thielen?
I would go and buy low on Legette. Like I think that he would be the one I go buy low on. I don't want to say I trust it. It would be one of those situations like we talked about last week, right, with Jennings, where it's you add the piece and you kind of see what happens this following week. You don't necessarily plug them in and play unless you're absolutely in a massive bind at the receiver position. But I think you could find better options than an uncertain, wide receiver 2 on the Carolina Panthers offense. I think Deontay Johnson, a lot of people were kind of panicking and cutting and stuff like that. If he's out there, I'd be very aggressive with him because I'm not saying that the high-end production is here to stay, but I think he's going to offer a pretty steady floor now with Dalton under center. I think that's going to be Dalton's go-to guy, and I like Johnson's floor moving forward. So if he's out there, go get him. Otherwise, I think Legette and kind of like a speculative ad. That's how I view these players. Like you kind of see what happens, and then you can make a decision the following week. If you might miss that high peak week, that's fine. Like you miss with Jennings, you might miss it. But now you know what? You don't have to go and spend 25, 30% of your fab budget to acquire the player that you have to make a decision now in the following week.
Let's go to the chat room and talk about a couple of questions that I see here. Number 1, I clicked on the wrong thing, Armando. Hello, John. Yes, you're still very humble and handsome. How about Hal? Hal's got a 14-team league. Yeah, we talked about that earlier, Armando. 14-team league for Hal. He's got a trade question here. Should he trade ETN and Javonte Williams for DK Metcalf and Chuba Hubbard? He also adds that he's got Jonathan Brooks on his bench. So he would be getting the backfield for the Panthers. The offense looks invigorated now, obviously, with Dalton under center. ETN for Metcalf, fair based on need. Javonte Williams for Hubbard, fair based on need. I think this trade works. The real question, obviously, is what is your receiving core? How much of a boost do you get there? But I don't have a problem doing this deal. I think that, getting the backfield for Carolina is good. I think Hubbard, 20 touches and effectiveness. We saw it last time out. I'm okay with this. The Broncos, I just don't know what they're doing in the backfield right now.
Yeah, I think with this trade is you're basically downgrading a little bit at your wide receiver or your running back 2 position. I'm sorry, and like you mentioned, like there should be a significant upgrade at the receiver position. You lose a little bit of the depth, right? Because you're giving up 2 running backs and you're only getting 1 in return. But I agree with you. I think this trade works, especially if you're in need of a receiver here. I think this trade works. And if you ask me, who's probably the top player on from this list? I think Metcalf. I think we both agree Metcalf is the top player in this trade. So I always like being on the receiving end when you're getting that top player of a particular trade. So I'm on board with this trade as well.
Another ETN move. Slim Shady asked, would you offer ETN and either McLaurin or Sutton for Kyler Murray and Garrett Wilson? He lost Tua. He's been going with Carr. Carr kind of did the opposite of Jaden Daniels. Great for 2 weeks. Then week 3 was, I'm just saying it's tough when you're throwing the ball 26 times a week. You have to be so efficient and that's where Carr has been. So do we do this deal? ETN, and I'm going to say Sutton. I'd rather hold McLaurin. It's close, but I'd rather hold McLaurin. So I'm going to say ETN and Sutton to get Kyler Murray and Garrett Wilson. I mean, sign me up for that, especially with Barkley and Kamara as the 1 and 2 running backs.
Yeah, I'm in. He's saying ETN is the flex. You're swapping ETN for the way I view it is you're swapping ETN for Garrett Wilson. I was drafting Garrett Wilson ahead of ETN. Right. Sign me up. And you're getting a top 5-6 fantasy quarterback right now.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. I'd be stunned if that offer was accepted. I really would be stunned. ETN and McLaurin may not even get you.
I agree. Keep McLaurin. I'm not getting rid of McLaurin here.
Yeah.
Of the 2, I'm getting rid of Sutton. I don't know if I make the trade if it involves me having to send McLaurin. I think that changes the dynamics for me.
Sean says, would you pick up DeAndre Hopkins, who didn't do anything through 2 weeks, had 6 catches, 73 yards, and a touchdown, I think it was this week, and drop Pitts? Tight end optional in this league, so that Pitts loses a ton of value because he just is a flex play or wide receiver tight end play. Would you go Hopkins over Pitts, though? Pitts has been Kyle Pitts, which is really disappointing through 3 weeks.
This is my question would be, does this really upgrade your roster? Like, does it change the dynamic? Like, I feel like you're replacing one player for another with the same, that brings the same to the table, I guess, with different positions. So I don't want to say same tier, but I think that you're getting the same kind of volatile floor, the same ceiling, like you're getting the same production in return. So I don't like making those changes. I probably just stay put here.
Final question, Armando. Z Smitty says, I have Jordan Love. Do you pick up Aaron Rodgers and start him this week since my opponent is starting Garrett Wilson? Number one, we're hopeful that Jordan Love will play this week. He was moving around in pregame last week. There was some thought that maybe he would play last week. Seems like he's got a good chance to play this week. Number two, I'm not adding Aaron Rodgers because my opponent has Garrett Wilson. That's not a move I'm making. What do you think about this idea that Smitty has?
No, I would wait and get official Jordan Love news. I'd see, I'm assuming there are multiple quarterbacks out there. Have a replacement in mind, maybe 2, just in case the one you have is taken but for whatever reason. And I agree with 100%. You never make a lineup decision based on your opponent's players. Never, ever, ever. I never do that. Never make those kind of decisions. Play your best players and let your opponent make those kind of decisions.
Armando Marsal, Ray Flowers, thanks for the questions, folks. And as you can tell here, if you leave them on Instagram, I'm all messed up today, Armando. If you leave them on YouTube at youtube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork, or on Facebook at facebook.com/FantasyGuruHQ. The show's live there streaming, so you can leave comments that we will address during the show. If you're catching us, in your podcast form or later on, obviously you don't have the ability to do that. But thanks for the question today. We always have a rousing group in there. Always appreciate that. Armando, it's Tuesday. Lay it out for us. What's coming on the next couple of days for you? I know you're doing a ton of things.
Yep, we got everything coming on the site. We got the staff picks. I got the red zone review. We got the defense versus position charts. Obviously, the snap and usage breakdown that goes live tomorrow. My DFS breakdown goes live on Friday. We got the Mind of Marcel podcast that usually launches on Thursdays. And then we got the Sunday morning live stream, 11 a.m. Eastern. Chris Rose and I break down the entire DFS. Obviously, we have tonight. We have the roster coach live stream there at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So any lineup questions, waiver wire questions, all of that are answered live on that live stream. So make sure you tune in there at 7 p.m. Eastern.
And the new servers are good. The website's
yes, they are, right?
fast.
They are.
Yeah,
much
right?
faster. Much faster.
So we had a little bit of an issue with that, but we transitioned to new servers, and now we're good to go. So hopefully, crisis averted for the rest of the way. All right, Armando, thanks for joining us today. We'll talk to you in 7 days here. And the folks, as you noted, can find you in a myriad of ways, including in Discord over at fantasyguru.com. Thanks for your time today.
Yep. Thank you. Have a good one.
You got it. That's Armando Marcel. I'm Ray Flowers. We're out, folks. I'll be back tomorrow. I won't be back tomorrow. Excuse me. See, here I am, not even knowing what day it is. Tomorrow is Justin Fensterman and Rich Millett. I'll be back on Thursday and Friday to visit with Tyler Beaker and Russell Clay. For Armando Marcel, I'm Ray Flowers. This has been Fantasy Sports Daily, 12 o'clock Eastern, Monday through Friday, powered by fantasyguru.com.